Marriage is like home wiring. One crossed wire and your whole house burns down. I learned that lesson the hard way when my 6-year-old daughter handed me a crayon drawing that changed everything. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Look what I made, Daddy. Molly bounced into my garage workshop, her pigtails swinging as she thrust a piece of construction paper at me. I was hunched over my workbench, rewiring an old radio, the kind of mindless task that helped me forget about the growing tension in my house. I set down my soldering iron and took the drawing. 3 stick figures stood in front of a house that looked suspiciously like ours. One was clearly Molly, with her signature yellow pigtails. Another was obviously Dana, my wife, with her long brown hair. But the third figure made my stomach drop. "Who's this guy with the beard, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "That's Mommy's friend. He comes over when you're at work and helps with stuff." The paper crumpled slightly in my grip. "What kind of stuff?" "I don't know. Mommy says I have to play in my room when he visits. But sometimes I see him through the window. He's really strong, stronger than you, Daddy." Kids, they'll destroy your world with the innocence of a nuclear bomb. I heard Dana's footsteps on the concrete before I saw her. She appeared in the garage doorway wearing that fake smile she'd perfected over the past few months, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Molly, honey, why don't you go wash up for dinner?" Dana's voice had that sharp edge it got when she was trying to control a situation. After Molly skipped away, Dana turned to me. "What's that?" I held up the drawing. "Apparently our daughter's been meeting your friend." Dana barely glanced at the paper. "Oh, that. Reed's been helping me with some yard work. Heavy lifting, you know. Things you never have time for." Reed Dalton. Our neighbor from 3 houses down, married to Joyce, father of 2, and apparently the star of my daughter's artwork. I'd seen him around the neighborhood. One of those guys who always seemed to be washing his car or trimming his hedge with surgical precision. The kind of man who wore polo shirts to mow his lawn and somehow never got sweaty. "Since when do you need help with yard work?" I asked. "Since my husband became married to his job instead of his family." The words came out like bullets. "Reed doesn't mind spending time helping out. He says it's what neighbors do for each other." How thoughtful of him. At least someone around here knows how to be helpful. Dana snatched the drawing from my hands. "Maybe if you paid half as much attention to this house as you do to your precious electronics, I wouldn't need to ask other people for help." She turned and walked back toward the house, leaving me standing there with my mouth hanging open like an idiot. 20 minutes later, I heard her on the phone in the kitchen, voice low and secretive. When I walked in to grab a beer, she quickly hung up. "Who was that?" I asked. "Nobody important." She didn't look at me. "Dinner's in the oven." That night, lying in bed next to my wife of 8 years, I stared at the ceiling and tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. But Molly's drawing sat on my nightstand like evidence in a trial I didn't want to prosecute. Dana had been different lately, more critical, more distant. She'd started wearing perfume to grocery store runs and taking longer showers. Her phone had become permanently attached to her hand, and she guarded it like state secrets. And then there was Reed. Always so helpful, always so available, always so goddamn perfect. I'm Vince Harland, by the way, 42 years old, electrical engineer for the city's power department. I fix things for a living, transformers, circuit breakers, the occasional residential nightmare that some weekend warrior created with a YouTube tutorial and dangerous confidence. I understand how systems work, how they fail, and how to spot problems before they burn everything down. But apparently, I'd missed the warning signs in my own house. The next morning, Dana was already gone when I woke up. She'd left a note saying she was taking Molly to the park, but when I drove past Riverside Park on my way to work, I didn't see our car. I told myself it didn't mean anything. There were other parks, other explanations. But doubt is like an electrical short. Once it starts, it spreads through everything until the whole system fails. At work, my partner Troy noticed my distraction immediately. Troy's one of those guys who can diagnose your problems faster than he can fix a blown fuse. "You look like hell, Vince. What's eating you?" "Nothing, just tired." "Bullshit. I've seen tired. This is something else." He leaned against the truck while we took our lunch break. "Wife troubles?" I almost told him about the drawing, about Dana's secretive phone calls, about the growing certainty that my marriage was circling the drain. But admitting it out loud would make it real, and I wasn't ready for that level of reality. "Just the usual stuff," I said instead. "The usual stuff doesn't make a man look like he's planning a murder. Talk to me." "It's probably nothing. Dana's been different lately, distant, critical, and there's this neighbor who's been helping her with things around the house." Troy's expression darkened. "What kind of things?" "Yard work, supposedly. Heavy lifting. Guy named Reed Dalton." "Reed Dalton?" Troy nearly choked on his sandwich. "Tall guy, beard, drives a black BMW? You know him?" "Know of him. His wife Joyce works with my sister at the bank. Word is, Reed's got a reputation for being very helpful to lonely housewives. Very helpful, if you catch my meaning." The sandwich turned to cardboard in my mouth. "What kind of reputation?" "The kind where wives suddenly need a lot of help with projects their husbands are perfectly capable of handling. Joyce has been complaining about it for months, apparently. Says Reed's always finding excuses to visit other women's houses during the day." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Has Joyce said anything specific about Dana?" "Not to my sister. But Vince, if you're having doubts, trust them. Guys like us, we're trained to spot problems. When something doesn't feel right, it usually isn't." That afternoon, I couldn't concentrate on work. Every transformer looked like Reed's face. Every crossed wire reminded me of my marriage. When quitting time came, I drove home with a plan forming in my head. If Dana was being unfaithful, I needed proof. And if there's one thing I know how to do, it's set up surveillance systems. I stopped at Radio Shack and bought a small wireless camera, the kind they sell for home security. Nothing fancy, just something that could stream to my phone and record to a memory card. I told the kid behind the counter it was for monitoring my garage workshop. He didn't ask questions. At home, Dana was in the kitchen making dinner. She seemed unusually cheerful, humming while she chopped vegetables. Molly was coloring at the kitchen table, working on another masterpiece. "How was your day, honey?" Dana asked without looking up from her cutting board. "Fine. Quiet day at the office." I kissed her cheek, noting the faint scent of cologne that definitely wasn't mine. "How about you?" "Oh, you know, the usual. Molly and I went to the park, then ran some errands. Reed stopped by to look at that loose board on the deck railing. He's going to fix it tomorrow, while you're at work." How convenient of him. "He's just being neighborly, Vince. Not everyone has ulterior motives." But her eyes didn't meet mine when she said it. After dinner, while Dana was giving Molly a bath, I slipped into our bedroom and installed the camera. I hid it inside an old alarm clock on the dresser, angled to capture most of the room. The lens was barely visible, and the streaming app on my phone worked perfectly. I felt sick doing it. Installing surveillance equipment in my own bedroom felt like admitting defeat, like crossing a line I could never uncross. But I had to know. The uncertainty was eating me alive. That night, Dana fell asleep quickly. I lay awake listening to her breathe, wondering if she was dreaming about Reed Dalton and his helpful hands. The next morning, she was already dressed and making breakfast when I came downstairs. She wore a blue sundress I'd never seen before and had taken extra care with her makeup. "You look nice," I said. "Thank you. I thought I'd make an effort today." "Special occasion? Can't a woman dress up for herself?" But she was checking her phone every few minutes, and when a text came through around 8:30, she smiled in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. I left for work with a knot in my stomach and my phone burning a hole in my pocket. Every few minutes, I checked the camera feed. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Dana cleaned the kitchen, did some laundry, played with Molly in the backyard. Then, at 10:47 a.m., Reed Dalton walked into my bedroom. He didn't knock, didn't wait to be invited. He just walked in like he owned the place, and Dana was there waiting for him. She'd changed out of the sundress and into a silk robe I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago. What happened next burned itself into my retinas like staring at the sun. I watched my wife of 8 years, the mother of my child, the woman I'd built my life around, betray everything we'd ever meant to each other. But the worst part wasn't the physical betrayal. It was what they said afterward. "God, Dana, you're incredible," Reed panted, lying in my bed, wearing my college sweatshirt. "How do you stand being married to that boring loser?" "It's not easy," she replied, tracing circles on his chest. "Vince has no passion, no fire. He's like a piece of furniture that occasionally pays bills. You deserve better. You deserve a real man." "I know, but divorce is complicated, especially with Molly. I need to be smart about this." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we need to be patient, build a case, show that Vince is neglectful, that he doesn't prioritize his family. Then when I file for divorce, I can get everything, the house, custody, alimony. And then we can be together. And then we can be together." I sat in my work truck in the parking lot of a Home Depot, watching my life implode on a 3-inch screen. Around me, normal people went about their normal days, buying lumber and light fixtures, completely unaware that my world had just ended. Troy found me there an hour later. "Jesus, Vince, we've been looking for you everywhere. You missed the Johnson Street call and your radio's been over. What the hell?" He stopped when he saw my face. "What happened?" I handed him my phone. He watched for about 30 seconds before handing it back, his expression grim. "Shit, man, I'm sorry. They're planning to destroy me, Troy. Not just the affair. They want to take everything. My house, my daughter, my future. They're going to paint me as a neglectful husband and father. What are you going to do?" I looked at my phone, at the frozen image of Reed Dalton in my bed, and felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. The same methodical thinking I used to diagnose electrical problems, but focused on a different kind of system failure. "I'm going to give them exactly what they're asking for," I said. "They want to play games with my life? Fine, but they picked the wrong guy to underestimate. Vince, Reed Dalton thinks I'm a boring loser who doesn't fight for what's his. Dana thinks I'm a pushover who'll roll over and play gone. They're about to learn that the quiet guy who fixes things for a living also knows how to break them." I started the truck and pulled out of the parking lot, my mind already working through the possibilities. They wanted to destroy me, systematically, professionally, coldly. I could play that game too. And I was about to show them that when it comes to electrical systems, the most dangerous failures are the ones you never see coming. The thing about surveillance is that once you start, you can't stop. It becomes an addiction worse than gambling or drinking because every minute of footage might contain the evidence that changes everything. Over the next week, I collected enough material to destroy both their lives twice over. Reed came by every Tuesday and Thursday while I was at work, always using the excuse of helping with household projects. They used my bedroom, my shower, my kitchen table. They drank my beer and laughed about my inadequacies. But more importantly, they talked. And I recorded every word. "Joyce is getting suspicious," Reed said during one of their post-coital conversations. "She asked me yesterday why I've been so helpful around the neighborhood lately." "What did you tell her?" "That I'm just being a good neighbor, but she's not buying it. She made some comment about me being awfully concerned with other people's wives. We need to be more careful. Or we need to speed up the timeline. How long do you think it'll take to build a case against Vince?" "A few more months, maybe. I need to document his neglect, his absence from family activities. I'm keeping a journal of every time he chooses work over family, every time he disappoints Molly. What about the house? That's the tricky part. Vince's name is on everything, but if I can prove he's an unfit father and husband, I can get the court to award me the house as part of the settlement, especially if I have a stable, loving relationship ready to provide for Molly. They were planning my destruction with the same casual efficiency most people use to plan vacations, but they made one crucial mistake. They underestimated their opponent. I spent my evenings researching divorce law, child custody statutes, and property rights. I learned about hidden assets, surveillance evidence, and character witnesses. Most importantly, I learned that in our state, adultery was still grounds for divorce and could significantly impact custody and property division. But I needed more than video evidence. I needed allies. My first stop was Joyce Dalton. I found her Saturday morning in her front yard, aggressively pruning rose bushes like they'd personally offended her. She looked up when I approached, and I could see the strain in her eyes, the same haunted look I'd been wearing for weeks. "Morning, Joyce. Beautiful roses." "Thank you, Vince. Though they're more trouble than they're worth. Always need attention, always demanding care, and half the time they just end up disappointing you anyway." Something in her tone told me we weren't really talking about flowers. "I know the feeling. Can I ask you something, Joyce? Neighbor to neighbor?" She set down her pruning shears and looked at me directly. "Is this about my husband?" "What makes you say that?" "Because you have the same look I've been wearing for months. The look of someone who knows their spouse is lying but can't quite prove it yet." I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot from the camera feed. Reed entering my house while Dana waited in the doorway. Joyce stared at the image for a long moment, then sat down heavily on her front steps. "How long?" she asked. "I've been recording for about a week, but I think it's been going on longer." "Months," she said quietly. "Maybe longer. Reed's been working late, going on mysterious errands, being extra attentive when he is home. Classic guilt behavior. And Dana, I see how she looks at him during neighborhood gatherings, how she finds excuses to talk to him. I have hours of footage, Joyce. Audio, too. They're not just having an affair, they're planning to destroy both our marriages and take everything we've worked for." I played her some of the audio recordings. Her face went white, then red, then settled into something hard and determined. "What do you want from me, Vince?" "I want justice. For both of us. They think they're smarter than we are, that we're just obstacles to be removed. I want to show them what happens when you underestimate the people you're trying to destroy." Joyce stood up, brushing dirt off her hands. "What do you need?" "Documentation, witnesses, evidence of Reed's pattern of behavior, and when the time comes, I'll need you to testify about what you've observed." "Consider it done. Reed wants to play games with our lives. Fine. But he picked the wrong woman to betray." My next ally was unexpected. Alyssa Morrison, Dana's best friend and supposed confidant. I caught her at the grocery store Monday evening, looking frazzled and avoiding eye contact. "Hey, Alyssa, how are you holding up?" She looked around nervously. "Fine, Vince. Just fine. Busy, you know how it is. Dana mentioned you've been a great support system for her lately." "Well, that's what friends do." But she wouldn't meet my eyes. Must be hard keeping secrets. That got her attention. "What do you mean?" I leaned against my shopping cart, keeping my voice casual. "I know about Reed, Alyssa. I know about the affair, the planning, all of it. The question is, are you going to keep enabling Dana's destruction of our family? Or are you going to do the right thing?" Her face crumpled. "Vince, I never meant for it to go this far. When Dana first told me about Reed, I thought it was just a crush, maybe some harmless flirting. I told her to be careful, to think about Molly. But you didn't try to stop her." "How could I? She's my best friend. She said you were emotionally distant, that the marriage was already over. She made it sound like she was just looking for happiness." "And when you realized it was more than that?" By then, she was in too deep. She'd made plans, started talking about divorce strategy. She asked me to back up her stories about you being neglectful, about you prioritizing work over family. Will you? Alyssa stared at her shopping cart for a long moment. No, I won't lie under oath, and I won't help destroy a marriage, especially not when there's a child involved. Dana's made her choices, but I don't have to enable them. Thank you. Vince? For what it's worth, I think Dana's making a huge mistake. Reed Dalton isn't the man she thinks he is. I've heard things about him, about other women. Dana thinks she's special, but she's just the latest in a pattern. That evening, I called my lawyer, Jim Patterson, a guy I'd known since high school, who specialized in family law. I sent him the video files and audio recordings, along with my documentation of dates, times, and conversations. Jesus, Vince, he said after reviewing the evidence. This is a slam dunk. With this kind of documentation, Dana won't get anything close to what she's planning. In fact, you'll probably get primary custody and she might end up paying you support. What about the house? With evidence of adultery and her abandonment of parental duties, leaving Molly alone with her lover, planning to defraud you in the divorce, the court will almost certainly award you the marital home, especially if you can show you're the stable, responsible parent. How do we play this? Carefully. We don't want to tip our hand too early. Let her file first if she's planning to. It'll make her look like the aggressor. Then we counter with everything we have. But Vince, you need to be prepared for this to get ugly. When people realize they've been caught, they get desperate. He was right about that part. The next morning, I woke up to find my truck's tires slashed and asshole keyed into the paint on the driver's side door. Dana was already gone. Another mysterious errand with Molly. I called the police and filed a report, making sure to mention that I'd been having marital problems and suspected my wife's lover might be responsible. The officer took photos and promised to increase patrols in the neighborhood. Then I called Troy. I need a favor, buddy. Can you help me install some exterior security cameras? Someone vandalized my truck last night. Reed? Probably, but I want to catch him if he tries anything else. We spent the afternoon installing wireless cameras around my property, front yard, backyard, driveway, and garage. High definition, motion activated, with night vision and smartphone alerts. If anyone came onto my property, I'd know about it immediately. That evening, Dana came home with Molly around dinner time. She seemed unusually agitated, checking her phone constantly and jumping at small noises. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, just tired. Long day. But I could see the guilt eating at her. The vandalism had probably been Reed's idea, a way to intimidate me or provoke a reaction. What they didn't know was that every move they made was just giving me more ammunition. After Molly went to bed, Dana confronted me in the kitchen. Vince, we need to talk. About what? About us. About our marriage. I think we both know things haven't been good between us for a while. Is that what you think? I think we've grown apart. I think we want different things. I think maybe it's time we considered other options. Other options like Reed Dalton? The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? I'm talking about your helpful neighbor who's been fixing things around here while I'm at work. I'm talking about the man who's been in our bedroom, our bed, planning our divorce with you. Vince, I don't know what you think you know, but I know everything, Dana. Every conversation, every plan, every lie you've told. I know about the journal you're keeping to document my supposed neglect. I know about your strategy to take the house and get custody of Molly. I know about Reed's reputation with other women in the neighborhood. She sat down hard in one of the kitchen chairs, her face white as paper. How long have you known? Long enough. The question is, what do you want to do about it? What do you mean? I mean you have two choices. You can end this affair, recommit to our marriage, and we can try to work through this. Or you can continue down this path and face the consequences. What consequences? I pulled out my phone and played 30 seconds of audio. Reed talking about my inadequacies while lying in my bed. The consequences of underestimating your husband. You want a divorce, Dana? Fine. But you're not going to destroy me in the process. You're not going to take my daughter or my house or my future. You made your choices and now you get to live with them. You recorded us? In our own bedroom? I recorded evidence of crimes being committed in my house. Adultery, trespassing, conspiracy to commit fraud. Take your pick. Dana started crying then, big dramatic sobs that might have moved me a month ago. But I'd heard her laughing about my weaknesses with another man. I'd watched her plan my destruction like it was a business transaction. Vince, please, I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work things out. You mean the same way you worked things out with Reed? The same way you planned to work me out of my own life? That wasn't real. It was just fantasy. Just talk. Was Reed in our bed just fantasy? Was him wearing my clothes just talk? She couldn't answer that. Here's what's going to happen, Dana. You're going to end your relationship with Reed immediately. You're going to stop your little documentation project. And you're going to pray that I decide you're worth saving. And if you don't, then you're going to discover that the boring, neglectful husband you married is much smarter and more ruthless than you ever imagined. I left her sitting at the kitchen table and went to check on Molly. My daughter was sleeping peacefully, clutching her favorite stuffed animal, completely unaware that her world was about to change forever. But as I stood in her doorway watching her sleep, I made a promise. Whatever happened between Dana and me, Molly would be protected. She would know she was loved, and she would never be used as a weapon in her parents' war. The next morning, I woke up to an empty house. Dana and Molly were gone, along with 2 suitcases and Dana's jewelry box. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Vince, I need time to think. Molly and I are staying with my sister for a few days. Don't try to contact us. When I'm ready to talk, I'll call you. Dana. But I knew better. She wasn't thinking. She was regrouping. Probably with Reed, probably planning their next move. I called Jim Patterson immediately. She's trying to establish abandonment, he said after I read him the note. Taking the child and leaving the marital home. It's a classic strategy, but it's going to backfire spectacularly when we show the court why she really left. What do I do? Document everything. Keep copies of the note. Take photos of what's missing. Maintain your normal routine. And whatever you do, don't do anything that could be construed as harassment or stalking. Let her make the mistakes. But as I hung up the phone, I realized Dana had made one crucial error. She thought she was protecting herself by leaving. Instead, she'd just given me the freedom to finish what she'd started. Dana stayed away for 3 days. 3 days of silence, of not knowing if I'd ever see my daughter again, of imagining them holed up somewhere planning their next attack. But I didn't waste the time feeling sorry for myself. I used it to prepare for war. On Thursday morning, my exterior cameras caught Reed Dalton creeping around my backyard at 6 a.m., trying to peer through windows. He was clearly looking for signs that Dana had come home, probably planning another one of their romantic rendezvous in my bed. I let him snoop for about 10 minutes, recording everything, then stepped out onto my back deck with a cup of coffee. Looking for something, Reed? He jumped like I'd shot him. Oh, Vince, I thought I saw someone in your yard last night. Wanted to make sure everything was okay. How thoughtful. And you decided to check at 6 in the morning by skulking around my property. I was just being neighborly. Right. The same way you were being neighborly when you were screwing my wife in my bedroom. His face went through several color changes before settling on pale green. I don't know what you're talking about. I held up my phone, showing him a screenshot from the bedroom camera. Sure you don't. Reed looked around nervously, probably realizing he was trapped in my backyard with nowhere to run. Vince, listen, I can explain. No need. I have hours of explanation already recorded. You and Dana were very thorough in your discussions about what a pathetic loser I am, and how you plan to take everything I've worked for. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. But here's the thing, Reed. You both made one crucial mistake. You assumed I was too stupid or too weak to fight back. I stepped closer, and he actually backed up against my fence. Where's Dana now, Reed? Is she staying with you, planning the next phase of your brilliant strategy? She needed time to think. She needed time to figure out how to fix this mess you both created. But it's too late for that. Way too late. What do you want? I want you to understand something very clearly. You came into my house, violated my marriage, used my daughter as cover for your affair, and planned to destroy my life. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? Vince, I'm sorry. It got out of hand. You never meant to get caught. There's a difference. I pulled out my phone and started dialing. Who are you calling? The police. You're trespassing on my property, and I have video evidence of you stalking my house. I also have evidence of you committing adultery in my home and conspiring to defraud me in a divorce proceeding. Wait, please. Don't call the police. Think about Molly. Think about the scandal. I am thinking about Molly. I'm thinking about how her mother abandoned her to run away with her lover. I'm thinking about how you used a 6-year-old child as cover for your affair. I'm thinking about how you planned to steal her father's house and destroy her family. The phone was ringing. What do you want me to do? Reed asked desperately. I want you to disappear. I want you to end whatever relationship you have with my wife, pack up your family, and get out of this neighborhood. I want you gone before this gets any uglier than it already is. I can't just leave. I have a job, a mortgage. You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy 2 families for a piece of ass. The 911 operator answered, and I gave Reed one last chance to walk away. He took it, practically running across my yard and disappearing into the alley behind our houses. But I knew it wouldn't end there. Desperate people do desperate things, and Reed Dalton was about to get very desperate indeed. That afternoon, Dana finally called. Vince, we need to talk. Where's Molly? She's fine. She's with my sister. I want to see her. That's what I'm calling about. I think we should meet, just the 2 of us, and figure out how to handle this situation. What situation is that, Dana? Don't play games with me. You know what situation. Reed told me about this morning. Did he tell you about the part where he was trespassing on our property at 6 a.m., or just the part where he ran away like a coward when I confronted him? He said you threatened him. I promised him consequences for his actions. There's a difference. Vince, this doesn't have to get ugly. We can handle this like adults. Adults don't abandon their children to run away with their lovers. Adults don't plan to defraud their spouses in divorce proceedings. Adults don't use their 6-year-old daughter as cover for extramarital affairs. I never used Molly. You left her alone in the house while Reed was there. You made her keep secrets about his visits. You drew her into your lies and deception. How is that not using her? Silence on the other end of the line. Where do you want to meet? I asked. Neutral ground, the coffee shop on 5th Street, tomorrow at noon. Fine. But Dana? Bring Molly with you. I want to see my daughter. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't care what you think is a good idea. You took my child away from her home without my permission. You've involved her in your affair. You've abandoned your family for another man. I want to see Molly, and I want her to know that her father is fighting for her. Don't make this about Molly. You made this about Molly the moment you decided to destroy her family. Bring her tomorrow, or the next conversation we have will be through lawyers. She hung up without agreeing, but I knew she'd bring Molly. Dana still thought she could manipulate the situation, still believed she could control the narrative. She wanted to meet in public because she thought it would limit my options, keep me calm and reasonable. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The next morning, I dressed carefully, khakis, button-down shirt, the kind of outfit that screamed responsible father and husband. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early and chose a table near the window where I could see the parking lot. Dana arrived exactly on time, holding Molly's hand. My daughter looked confused and tired, like she hadn't been sleeping well. When she saw me through the window, her face lit up, and she started pulling Dana toward the door. "Daddy!" Molly ran to me the moment they entered, throwing her arms around my waist. "I missed you so much." "I missed you too, sweetheart." I picked her up and held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "How are you doing? Are you okay?" "I'm okay, but I want to come home. Aunt Sarah's house smells funny and I don't have my toys." "We'll figure that out, baby. Daddy's working on it." Dana sat down across from me, looking tired and defensive. She'd lost weight in the past few days, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Of course. Molly, why don't you go pick out a cookie from the counter? Get whatever you want." After Molly skipped away, Dana leaned forward and lowered her voice. "Vince, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But we need to think about what's best for Molly." "I am thinking about what's best for Molly. That's why I want her home where she belongs. Things are complicated right now. Maybe it's better if she stays with my sister until we figure things out." "Nothing's complicated, Dana. You had an affair. You got caught. You ran away. Now you're trying to use our daughter as a bargaining chip." "That's not what I'm doing." "Then bring her home tonight." "I can't do that." "Why not?" Dana glanced around nervously, then back at me. "Because Reed thinks you might do something violent. He's scared, Vince. He thinks you might hurt him or his family." I laughed, and the sound was bitter enough to turn heads at nearby tables. "Reed scared? The same Reed who was sneaking around my property yesterday morning? The same Reed who spent months violating my home and my marriage? He's worried I might hurt him? You threatened him. I promised him consequences. And here they are." I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot of an email I'd sent that morning. "I sent copies of our bedroom surveillance footage to Reed's employer this morning. Turns out using company time and a company vehicle to conduct extramarital affairs violates their ethics policy. Reed should be hearing from HR any minute now." Dana's face went white. "You didn't." "I also sent copies to Joyce Dalton, along with audio recordings of you and Reed planning to destroy both your marriages. She's filing for divorce this afternoon and naming you as co-respondent." "Vince, please." "And I sent copies to the HOA president, since Reed's been using our neighborhood as his personal hunting ground for lonely housewives. Apparently, there's a morality clause in the neighborhood covenant that allows them to censure residents for conduct that damages the community's reputation. You're destroying his life. I'm giving him the same consideration he gave me, the same consideration you gave me." Molly came back with a chocolate chip cookie, completely oblivious to the tension at our table. "Daddy, are you and Mommy fighting?" "We're having a grown-up discussion, sweetheart. Sometimes adults disagree about things." "Are you getting divorced like Tommy's parents?" The question hit like a punch to the gut. I looked at Dana, who was staring at her hands. "I don't know, baby. Maybe. But no matter what happens between Mommy and me, we both love you very much, and that will never change." "Will I still live with you?" "I hope so. I'm doing everything I can to make sure you come home where you belong." Dana's phone buzzed. She looked at it, and her face crumpled. "What is it?" I asked. "Reed's been fired. His boss called an emergency meeting and terminated him for gross misconduct." "That's unfortunate. Vince, you have to stop this. You're ruining lives." "I'm not ruining anything. I'm just making sure everyone faces the consequences of their choices." Her phone buzzed again. "Joyce is at Reed's office. She's making a scene, telling everyone what he did. It's all over social media. Joyce is a good woman who deserved better than a cheating husband. I'm glad she's standing up for herself." "This is insane. You're destroying everything." "No, Dana. You destroyed everything. I'm just making sure everyone knows who's responsible." I stood up and lifted Molly into my arms. "We're going home now, sweetheart." "What? No!" Dana jumped up. "You can't just take her." Watch me. I'm her father, and you abandoned the marital home. I have every right to take my daughter back to her own house. I'll call the police. Go ahead. I'll show them the surveillance footage of you abandoning your child to run away with your lover. I'll show them the recordings of you planning to defraud me in divorce proceedings. I'll show them the evidence that you've been using Molly as cover for your affair. Dana looked around the coffee shop, realizing that our conversation had attracted attention from other customers. Several people were openly staring, and at least one person was recording with their phone. Don't make a scene, Dana. You've humiliated yourself enough already. I carried Molly toward the door, and she wrapped her arms around my neck. Are we going home, Daddy? Yes, baby. We're going home. Behind us, I heard Dana start to cry. But I didn't look back. I'd spent months being the understanding husband, the patient father, the reasonable man who tried to work things out. That man was gone. In his place was someone much harder, much smarter, and much more dangerous than Dana or Reed had ever imagined. The war was just beginning, and I intended to win it. By the time we got home, word had spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Joyce Dalton was standing in her front yard with 3 large garbage bags, throwing Reed's belongings onto the lawn while a small crowd of neighbors watched. When she saw me getting Molly out of the car, she marched over with the determination of a woman who'd finally found her target. Vince, thank you. Thank you for giving me the evidence I needed to end this charade. How are you holding up, Joyce? Better than I have in months. Reed's been lying to my face for so long, I'd started to think I was going crazy. Having proof, it's liberating. Molly tugged on my shirt. Daddy, why is Mrs. Dalton throwing things in her yard? Sometimes when people get angry, they do things that seem strange to kids. Why don't you go inside and play while I talk to Mrs. Dalton? After Molly disappeared into the house, Joyce's expression hardened. Reed's been calling me nonstop since he got fired, begging, making excuses, promising to change. But you know what he hasn't done once? Apologized. Not once has he said he's sorry for what he did to our family. What are you going to do? Divorce him. Take him for everything he's worth, which admittedly isn't much now that he's unemployed. But I want him to understand that actions have consequences. And Dana? Oh, she's been calling too. Crying, saying she never meant for it to go this far, begging me not to name her in the divorce. I told her she should have thought about that before she decided to screw my husband. My phone rang. Dana's number. Excuse me, Joyce. Vince, you have to bring Molly back. You can't just take her. I can, and I did. She's my daughter, and she belongs in her own home. I'm calling my lawyer. Good. Have him call Jim Patterson. They can work out visitation schedules while we proceed with the divorce. Divorce? Vince, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, rebuild our marriage. Our marriage ended the moment you brought Reed Dalton into our bedroom. Everything that's happening now is just paperwork. What about Molly? What about our family? You destroyed our family. I'm just picking up the pieces and protecting what's left. I made mistakes, but you made choices, Dana. You chose Reed over our marriage. You chose deception over honesty. You chose to use our daughter as cover for your affair. Now you get to live with those choices. Please don't do this. It's already done. I hung up and turned back to Joyce, who was watching me with something like admiration. You're handling this better than I expected, she said. I'm handling it the way it needs to be handled. They wanted to play games with our lives, Joyce. Now they get to find out what happens when they pick the wrong opponents. That evening, after Molly was in bed, I sat in my home office reviewing the surveillance footage one more time. Hours of evidence, dozens of conversations, a complete record of their betrayal and planning. But I wasn't looking for more ammunition. I was looking for patterns, for weaknesses I could exploit. Reed was the weak link. He was unemployed now, his marriage was over, and his reputation in the neighborhood was destroyed. Men like Reed, when they're desperate, make stupid decisions. I just had to wait for him to make his. I didn't wait long. At 2:17 a.m., my exterior cameras detected motion in the backyard. Reed Dalton was back, but this time he wasn't sneaking around. He was carrying a baseball bat and heading straight for my garage. I watched him on my phone as he smashed the windows of my workbench area, destroyed several of my tools, and spray-painted "asshole" on the garage door. Then he moved to my truck and used the bat to smash the headlights and windshield. I let him finish his tantrum, recording everything in high definition, then called 911. 911, what's your emergency? This is Vince Harland at 1247 Maple Street. There's a man destroying my property with a baseball bat. I have him on security camera and I know who he is. Are you in immediate danger, sir? No. I'm inside the house with my daughter. But he's caused several $1,000s in damage and I want him arrested. Units are on the way. Stay inside until they arrive. By the time the police showed up, Reed was long gone. But I had everything they needed. Clear video of his face, audio of him cursing my name, and a complete record of the damage he'd caused. Officer Martinez took my statement and reviewed the footage on my phone. This is excellent quality, Mr. Harland. We'll have no problem identifying the suspect. Have you had previous problems with this individual? He's been having an affair with my wife. I confronted him about it yesterday, and I think this is retaliation. We'll put out a warrant for his arrest. Vandalism, destruction of property, possibly harassment. He's looking at serious charges. Thank you, officer. After the police left, I called Jim Patterson despite the early hour. Jesus, Vince, it's almost 3 a.m. Reed just destroyed my truck and garage. I have it all on video. The police are issuing a warrant. Good. That's going to look great in family court. Dana's lover arrested for stalking and vandalism. It completely undermines any argument that you're the unstable one. There's more. I sent the affair evidence to Reed's employer yesterday. He was fired for ethics violations. Even better. Unemployed, arrested, and publicly humiliated. Dana picked a real winner. What's our next move? Let me file the divorce papers this morning. With Reed's arrest and the surveillance evidence, we can ask for an emergency custody hearing. Dana's going to have a very hard time explaining why Molly should live with her when her judgment is this poor. The next morning, Dana was at my door before I'd finished making coffee. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, hair disheveled, clothes wrinkled, eyes red from crying. Reed's been arrested, she said without preamble. I know. I'm the one who called the police. Vince, this has gone too far. You're destroying people's lives. I'm protecting my family from people who wanted to destroy us first. Reed was just angry. He made a mistake. Reed committed multiple felonies on my property while my daughter was sleeping inside. That's not a mistake. That's the behavior of a dangerous, unstable man. He's not dangerous. Tell that to my truck. Tell that to the police who arrested him. Tell that to the judge who's going to sentence him. Dana slumped against the doorframe. What do you want from me, Vince? What will it take to end this? I want you to sign the divorce papers when they're served. I want you to agree to joint custody with primary residence with me. I want you to stop trying to manipulate this situation and accept responsibility for what you've done. And if I don't? Then this gets much worse for everyone involved. Reed's arrest is just the beginning, Dana. I have evidence of your affair, your abandonment of Molly, your plans to defraud me in the divorce. I have character witnesses who will testify about your poor judgment and unstable behavior. I have a paper trail that shows you're an unfit mother. I'm not an unfit mother. You left your 6-year-old daughter alone with your lover. You abandoned your family to run away with a man who just committed multiple felonies. You used your child as cover for an extramarital affair. What would you call that? She started crying again, but I felt nothing. The woman who'd planned my destruction with another man in my own bed didn't get to play the victim now. I want to see Molly, she said. You can see her during supervised visitation once we work out a schedule. Supervised visitation? She's my daughter. She's our daughter. And you've proven you can't be trusted to put her welfare above your own selfish desires. This is insane. This is justice. I closed the door and went to check on Molly, who was eating cereal at the kitchen table and coloring in her activity book. "Was that Mommy at the door?" she asked. "Yes, sweetheart." "Why didn't she come in?" "Mommy and Daddy are having some problems right now, but no matter what happens, we both love you very much." "I know, Daddy, but I like it better when it's just us. It's quieter." Out of the mouths of babes. That afternoon, Jim Patterson called with news. Dana's been served with the divorce papers. Her lawyer wants to meet next week to discuss terms. What kind of terms? Probably trying to negotiate a better custody arrangement and property division, but with Reed's arrest and the surveillance evidence, she doesn't have much leverage. What about Reed? He made bail this morning, but he's got a restraining order keeping him away from you and your property. If he violates it, he goes back to jail immediately. And Joyce's divorce? Moving forward, she's naming Dana as co-respondent and seeking damages for alienation of affection. Dana could end up paying Joyce's legal fees and punitive damages. Everything was falling into place exactly as I'd planned. Reed was facing criminal charges and financial ruin. Dana was looking at a messy divorce, limited custody, and potential civil liability. Their affair had cost them everything, while I emerged as the wronged husband fighting to protect his daughter. But I wasn't finished yet. There was one more move to make, one final demonstration of what happens when you underestimate Vince Harland. That evening, I called a neighborhood meeting. The community center was packed. Word of the neighborhood meeting had spread through social media, text chains, and good old-fashioned gossip. Everyone wanted to see the final act of the drama that had been unfolding in their backyards. I'd scheduled the meeting under the pretense of discussing neighborhood security in light of recent vandalism incidents. But everyone knew what it was really about, the public reckoning for Reed Dalton and Dana Harland. Joyce sat in the front row, looking stronger than I'd seen her in months. Alyssa Morrison was there too, along with most of Dana's former friend group. The HOA board occupied a table near the front, looking official and stern. Even some neighbors I barely knew had shown up, drawn by the promise of drama. Dana arrived 15 minutes late, slipping in through the back door and taking a seat near the exit. She looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Reed was notably absent, probably on the advice of his lawyer. I stood at the front of the room with a laptop connected to a projector screen. "Thank you all for coming tonight. I know this has been a difficult time for our neighborhood, and I appreciate everyone's patience as we've dealt with some challenging situations." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. As many of you know, my family has been the victim of some troubling incidents recently. My property has been vandalized, my marriage has been destroyed by infidelity, and my daughter has been caught in the middle of adult problems that should never have involved her. I clicked to the first slide, a photo of my vandalized garage and truck. 2 nights ago, Reed Dalton was arrested for destroying my property. This wasn't a random act of vandalism, it was retaliation for my decision to expose his affair with my wife. More murmurs, louder now. But the vandalism is just the tip of the iceberg. What I want to share with you tonight is a pattern of behavior that threatens the safety and integrity of our entire neighborhood. I clicked to the next slide, a timeline showing Reed's visits to my house over the past several months. This is a record of Reed Dalton's visits to my home while I was at work. As you can see, he was there regularly, always during weekday hours when husbands were at their jobs and children were at school. "What's your point, Vince?" called out Bob Henderson from the third row. "My point, Bob, is that Reed Dalton has been using our neighborhood as his personal hunting ground. My wife wasn't his first victim, she was just the most recent." I clicked again. The screen showed a list of names, 6 women from our neighborhood and the surrounding area. These are women who have reported inappropriate contact from Reed Dalton over the past 2 years. Unwanted advances, offers to help with household projects, attempts to insert himself into their personal lives when their husbands were away. The room erupted in surprised chatter. Several women in the audience exchanged meaningful looks. "How did you get this information?" asked Sarah Chen, the HOA secretary. "I hired a private investigator after Reed's arrest. It turns out that when you start asking questions about Reed Dalton's behavior, a lot of people have stories to tell." I clicked to the next slide. Excerpts from the surveillance recordings with audio transcripts. "This is what Reed Dalton really thinks about our neighborhood, our families, and our marriages." I played 30 seconds of audio. Reed's voice clearly audible as he described his strategy for seducing lonely housewives and his contempt for their clueless husbands. The room went silent. This is a man who viewed our neighborhood as his personal brothel, who targeted vulnerable women and manipulated them into compromising situations, who used our children as cover for his predatory behavior. I looked directly at Dana, who was staring at her hands. My wife made terrible choices. She betrayed our marriage, abandoned our daughter, and participated in a plan to defraud me in divorce proceedings. But she was also victimized by a man who made a career out of destroying families. "What do you want us to do about it?" asked Tom Bradley, one of the HOA board members. "I want you to understand what we're dealing with. Reed Dalton isn't just an adulterer. He's a predator who has been systematically targeting the women in our community. His arrest for vandalism is just the beginning. There are going to be more revelations, more victims coming forward, more families destroyed." I clicked to the final slide, a photo of Molly's original drawing, the one that had started this whole nightmare. "This is what my 6-year-old daughter drew when she was asked to picture our family. She included a stranger, a man with a beard who had inserted himself into our lives so thoroughly that she thought he belonged there." My voice cracked slightly, and I had to pause for a moment. Reed Dalton didn't just destroy my marriage. He traumatized my child. He made her complicit in keeping secrets from her father. He used her innocence as a shield for his criminal behavior. The room was completely silent now. Even the people who had come for gossip and drama seemed sobered by the reality of what they were hearing. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for vigilance. We need to protect our families, our children, our community from people like Reed Dalton. We need to make it clear that this kind of behavior has consequences. I closed the laptop and looked out at the crowd. Are there any questions? Margaret Foster, an elderly woman who lived at the end of our street, raised her hand. "Vince, I want to apologize. I saw Reed coming and going from your house, and I thought it was nice that Dana had found such a helpful friend. I should have realized something was wrong." "You have nothing to apologize for, Margaret. Reed Dalton is a skilled manipulator. He fooled a lot of people." "What happens now?" asked Joyce Dalton from the front row. "Now we rebuild. Joyce is rebuilding her life without a cheating husband. I'm rebuilding my family as a single father. Our neighborhood is rebuilding its sense of security and trust." "What about Dana?" someone called out. I looked at my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, sitting in the back of the room. "Dana will have to answer for her own choices, but I hope she's learned something from this experience. I hope we all have." The meeting broke up slowly, with people clustering in small groups to discuss what they'd heard. Several neighbors approached me to offer support or share their own suspicions about Reed's behavior. Dana tried to leave without speaking to anyone, but Joyce intercepted her at the door. "Dana, wait." "Joyce, I'm so sorry. I never meant—" "Save it. You knew Reed was married. You knew he had children. You knew what you were doing when you decided to sleep with him. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. You're not a victim here, Dana. You're a co-conspirator, and I want you to know that when my divorce goes to trial, I'm going to make sure everyone understands exactly what kind of person you are." Dana fled the community center in tears. I was packing up my laptop when Alyssa Morrison approached. "Vince, I owe you an apology." "No, you don't." "Yes, I do. I knew what Dana was doing was wrong, and I should have tried harder to stop her. I should have told you what was happening." "You're not responsible for other people's choices, Alyssa." "Maybe not, but I enabled her by staying silent, I told myself I was being a good friend, but really I was just being a coward. What matters is that you're doing the right thing now. Is there anything I can do to help? With Molly? Or the divorce? Or anything? Actually, yes. I might need character witnesses in the custody hearing. People who can testify about Dana's behavior and judgment. You can count on me. By the time I got home, news of the meeting was already spreading through social media. Someone had recorded parts of my presentation and posted clips online. The neighborhood Facebook group was buzzing with comments and reactions. Most of the responses were supportive, but there were a few people defending Dana or questioning my motives for going public. I didn't engage with any of it. I'd said what I needed to say, and now I was letting the community draw its own conclusions. Molly was already asleep when I got home. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, had watched her during the meeting. I checked on her, kissed her forehead, and whispered a promise that I would never let anyone hurt her again. Then I sat in my living room and allowed myself to feel something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The war was almost over. Reed was facing criminal charges and social exile. Dana was looking at a humiliating divorce and limited custody. Their affair had cost them everything, while I had emerged as the protector of my daughter and defender of my community. But most importantly, Molly was safe. She was home, she was loved, and she would never again have to keep secrets about strangers in our house. My phone buzzed with a text message from Jim Patterson. Saw the video from tonight. Brilliant strategy. Dana's lawyer called. She wants to settle. Full custody to you. Minimal visitation for her. She keeps her car and personal belongings. She's ready to surrender. I smiled and typed back, "Set up the meeting. It's time to end this." The next morning, Dana called one last time. "Vince, I saw the video from last night. You humiliated me in front of the entire neighborhood." "You humiliated yourself, Dana. I just made sure everyone knew who was responsible. I want to see Molly before I sign the papers. You can see her during supervised visitation once the divorce is final. Please, just one conversation. I need to explain things to her." "Explain what? That you abandoned her to run away with a criminal? That you used her as cover for your affair? That you planned to steal her father's house?" "I need to say goodbye." "You said goodbye when you walked out of this house with your suitcases. You don't get to traumatize her again just to make yourself feel better." "Vince, please. Sign the papers, Dana. Take the settlement Jim offered. Walk away while you still have some dignity left." "And if I don't?" "Then we go to trial. I put Reed Dalton on the witness stand and make him explain his relationship with my wife in front of a judge. I call Joyce as a witness to describe how you helped destroy her marriage. I play the surveillance footage for a courtroom full of people and let them judge your fitness as a mother." "You wouldn't." "Try me." She hung up without another word. 3 days later, Dana signed the divorce papers. Full custody to me, minimal supervised visitation for her, and a property settlement that left her with almost nothing. She moved out of state the following week, claiming she needed a fresh start somewhere people didn't know her story. Reed Dalton pleaded guilty to vandalism and harassment charges. He was sentenced to 6 months in jail and 2 years probation. Joyce's divorce was finalized a month later, with Reed ordered to pay substantial alimony and child support despite his unemployment. The neighborhood slowly returned to normal, though Reed and Dana's story became a cautionary tale that parents told their teenage children about the consequences of poor choices. As for me and Molly, we built a new life together. She started seeing a counselor to help process the trauma of her parents' divorce, and I made sure she knew every day that she was loved and protected. 6 months after the dust settled, Molly brought me another drawing. This one showed just 2 stick figures, a tall one labeled Daddy and a small one labeled Me, standing in front of our house with a big sun shining overhead. "This is our family now," she said proudly. "Yes, it is, sweetheart. Just you and me. I like it better this way. No more strangers in our house." "No more strangers," I agreed, hanging her drawing on the refrigerator next to the first one. a reminder of how far we'd come and how much we'd survived. Reed Dalton had thought he was smarter than me. Dana had thought I was too weak to fight back. They'd both underestimated the quiet man who fixed electrical systems for a living, but I'd shown them something important. When you cross the wrong wires, everything burns down, and sometimes that's exactly what needs to happen. The stranger in my house was gone. My daughter was safe. And I'd learned that sometimes the best way to fix a broken system is to tear it down completely and rebuild it from scratch. Justice had been served, and it tasted better than I'd ever imagined.